going to spend murdering brown people next year?
Just next year, like literally save the planet. just quit.
Save the planet forever.
Yep.
And like,
just take a
all you have to do
break. You know, murdering brown people. Not even quit it
Just
forever.
spend-
Just like
you don't have to
a
take a break.
pause.
You don't even have to take a break. Just spend a little bit over half. Just spend 60% of what you were going to spend instead of 100%.
Yep.
Like, that's ridiculous. Depressing.
Oh, by the way, we're streaming, so.
Oh, well, hello everyone.
Sorry, I should have said that before. Sorry about that.
Well, after the last episode, I'm just glad we're not banned.
Yeah. Wait a second. Share screen.
Wait, are
Wait a second. Are we streaming?
Did it turn off? Yeah, we're live.
Yes, excellent. Hey.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is this open? I need to be able to do the thing where I have chat open but not the stream. Yeah, there we go. Because the placement of my internet router isn't good for having a stream on and doing a Skype call at the same time. I'm like too far away from the router in my house for that.
Okay.
Cool.
So we're talking about a German vegan Nazi butcher. That combination of words. And and I know it's such a minor point, but it's called a Metzgerei, which is a terrible pun. It's like, you know, instead of a butcher's, it's called a butcher's, like the V from vegan.
That's not even good.
No.
Oh, no.
And I saw that, and I had a real moment of, you know that line from Community, like I can excuse racism but not animal cruelty. I had that moment. I can excuse fascism but not bad puns.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, and we need to talk about the sponsored content article, because that's amazing as well that's on this article. So anyway.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So this article is by Irina Dimitrescu from 2018 and updated in September 2019, so pretty recently. Okay.
Yeah.
Bonn, Germany. The cult German police television drama Tatort, which has existed for like 25 years. It's ridiculous. Like every Sunday, people just watch Tatort. It's amazing. Cult German.
We have one of those.
Oh, nice.
We have two of those. We have CSI and Law and Order. They're both 100 years old. Yeah.
It's nice having that one TV show that like grandmas at like your little cousin watchers. It's nice. So when things get weird at like family dinners, you can just say, "Hey, have you watched the thing?"
Yeah, have you watched the serial killer show?
Yeah. Okay, the cult German television drama Tatort usually features murders committed by organ smugglers, baby thieves, and international spies. But on one Sunday this May, the suspects were a widely appreciated group, traditional back-to-the-land organic farmers. Their bucolic farm in the Black Forest had a dark side, however, and the detectives slowly discovered that the farmers' care for ancient crops and the school of modern technologies was based on a far-right blood and soil ideology. Like all good fiction, the episode has its roots in truth. These so-called bio-Nazis are no invention of the show's writers, but reflect a growing embrace of natural farming and eating among the right-wing extremists. Vegetarianism, veganism, and other forms of clean eating and organic farming are often associated with leftist, progressive movements. These food practices often combine a desire for bodily health with moral and social concerns. Indeed, interest in animal rights or in the protection of the environment seems to be within the special purview of green politics. Yeah, but green politics aren't necessarily left-wing, so that makes no sense.
Well, yeah. I think that's I don't know. We've gone over it quite a bit, but like you can use these politics or like these end results of your politics for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In recent years, however, clean food production, and even the ethical treatment of animals has been co-opted by far-right individuals and organizations. This kind of operation is not new. In Germany, natural eating started out primarily as a left-wing idea in the 19th century, but was adapted to a fascist message in the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Diet and politics have always been closely entwined, but in ever-changing ways. Clean eating is shifting back to the right.
Well, again, I hate that use of language where it's like you don't have to associate clean eating with the right because people on the right have started clean eating.
Yeah.
It's more like the right has shifted back to clean eating than clean eating has shifted back to the right.
Yeah.
I think that's an unfair way to phrase it.
Yeah. And I also think like clean eating is also just becoming more common. So, more people people are doing it. So, some of them are going to be fascists.
Yeah.
White supremacists in Germany and elsewhere are embracing diets free of animal products, demonstrating recipes on YouTube, and arguing for the sustainability of vegetarian diets for Aryan people. A 2012 study carried out by the Heinrich Böll Foundation, which is the publishing arm of the Green Party, by the way, which is affiliated with the German Green Party, drew attention to the phenomenon of right-wing organic farming movements in the state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Which is a lovely part of the country, like, very rural, like lakes and forests. It's lovely. Except for all the fascists.
Except for all the fascists.
Yeah.
Well, that's where some of the most beautiful parts of America are like that too, like Utah.
Yeah.
Where you get like, the big red rocks and the plateaus and everything, and it's a beautiful place to go.
Yeah.
Except it's full of fascists.
Yeah.
It's just stuffed with like that American proto-fascist that I talked about last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a vegetarian diet requires less arable land to produce than a meat-based one, adopting it could help Germany become agricultural self-sufficient. The Böll report warns that the buyer of an innocent-looking organic salad might be indirectly funding an organized far-right movement. More importantly, the state's neo-Nazi National Democratic Party had a history of opposing genetic engineering, patents on living organisms, and foreign investment in coal-based energy. Which I kind of agree with them on. I'm still not going to vote for them, but, broken clock and all that.
Yeah, and like I said last time too, I think a lot of times the far-right parties pick up on the fact that these organic movements gained a lot of popularity in the last 30 years, and then decide to incorporate that rhetoric. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have healthy principles or anything. It's just that the rhetoric is popular in general. So, of course, some of the fascists have picked up the rhetoric.
Yeah. It was thus well positioned to present itself as an advocate for the environment. The rhetoric of far-right environmentalism is particularly evident in the Bavarian magazine Umwelt und Aktiv, Environment and Active, which, with covers alternating between bucolic sunset photos of German landscapes and political cartoons. The periodical advertises an interest in the protection of the environment, animals, and Heimat, or homeland. I tried to find that magazine. Apparently it's not very common. Thank God.
Yeah.
Some articles are innocuous, listing helpful kitchen herbs, offering theories for declining bee populations, and arguing against the hunting of dolphins, which in Bavaria is not a huge problem.
Yeah,
like the amount of dolphin hunting that's going on is barely, like, I'd say negligible.
Yeah, in Bavaria, that's the dolphin population probably doesn't get out of control. Not like the wild feral hog population in America.
That's an issue.
Yeah, you might have 30 to 50 in the yard tomorrow.
Like, interspersed among these are unabashedly xenophobic pieces. Sorry, I was like really unabashedly xenophobic pieces. Sorry, serious voice. Interspersed among these are unabashedly xenophobic pieces. An article on the pedagogical values of forest kindergartens presents them as an alternative to multicultural preschools. I've known forest kindergartens as a fairly lefty kind of a thing. Like forest
I think, like I said, they like to adopt
Yeah.
the leftist rhetoric.
Mhm.
So another good parallel to me is Nazis think that they have a way into feminist theory.
Yeah.
Where they say we can provide a more fulfilling and a happier lifestyle for women, in which you're subservient to men.
Yep.
Like, just because they present themselves or think that they're trying to represent themselves as good for X issue doesn't actually mean that they're good for X issue.
Yeah.
So, like, forest kindergartens are good, but not as an alternative to multicultural preschools. As a venue for multicultural preschools, they could be good. But yeah, it's just their way of trying to say we're very good for this thing that they're distinctly not good for.
Yeah. Another piece rails against the barbarism of halal butchering practices, calling for animal rights activists to stand up to narrow-minded and cold-hearted Islamic fundamentalism. Let's call it like pot calling the cattle black. Jesus.
Yeah.
Does this mean that green is now in fact brown? Not quite. Although people use food to signify their class, religion, politics, and ethics, the ways they do so are changeable and complex. Historian Corinna Treitel, author of the recent book Eating Nature in Modern Germany, Food, Agriculture and Environment, circa 1870 through 2000, explains that natural foods are a very politically promiscuous and modern German history.
It's food. Everybody eats.
Yep. And, natural and clean and whole are very, depends on what your definition is.
Yeah.
Natural itself is a malleable term. It could mean avoiding processed food or dropping sugar, alcohol, and tobacco from one's diet. It might entail cutting back.
That's what I'm doing.
It might entail cutting back on meat once in a while. Becoming a vegetarian or buying food produced on biodynamic farms, do not do that. Just don't. Any of these choices could be made to serve different ideologies and political agendas. One of the pioneers of the natural eating movement was Eduard Balzer, a politically progressive religious reformer in the 1860s. Against the background of recent hunger crises in Prussia, Balzer argued that a vegetarian natural diet would make Germans healthier and fitter. It would have economic benefits too. Because a vegetarian diet requires less arable land to produce than a meat-based one, adopting it could help Germany become agriculturally self-sufficient. At the heart of this was a larger social vision. Balzer, says Treitel, was imagining diet as a tool for promoting material equality between Germans so that political democracy could emerge. I'm not seeing how that follows because, land owning is still a thing, and the elites still own most of the land, so one doesn't follow the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's an interesting thing to read on. Maybe I'll look that up tomorrow in my time during my day, and I'll see if I can figure out sort of what he's getting at.
Yeah.
Because I do recognize, like, I have a similar critique in my advocacy for community gardens, which is like food self-sufficiency within communities, getting off of factory farmed food. It sort of serves that same purpose where the less we rely on corporatized food production, then the less power that the corporations have and the more equal society can function. But that's not necessarily like a product of going to a plant-based rather than a meat-based diet. The plant-based aspect of the diet is more incidental to like what can you reasonably grow in a backyard, and like a herd of cattle isn't it. So I guess I'd have to see more what
Yeah.
what he's getting at and where his critique diverges from that.
I'd also be interested if his theory includes like major like reorganizing of who owns the land, who has access to the land.
Well, I think in the 1860s, I don't know that much about, mid-19th century Prussian history. May surprise you. But I'm not really sure where they were at in their social development, like where they were at in this process. I know this is like sort of...
Germany was founded in 1871, so 1849 we had a revolution, so that was like sort of the in-between period between the revolution and the founding of the country, and sort of the tail end of a lot of monarchies. So
right.
there was like a lot of change in society anyways, a transition period,
Well, thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate that. So this would have been the period of transition between like feudalist aristocracy and like into industrialism. Then.
Yes.
So maybe this critique comes up in that time that you would have been arguing instead of industrializing and corporatizing agriculture, disperse it, eat a plant-based diet that people can grow on the land that we just seized from the aristocrats, rather than transitioning that land into a bourgeois.
Though I don't actually know how much seizing was going on. I have no idea how much of that was happening.
Like I said, I have to look into his argument to see what he's talking about.
Like two paragraphs in an article is probably not, a fair representation of his...
We didn't even get a paragraph. I don't even think she included his whole sentence. So, yeah. But it's interesting.
Yeah. At the start of the 20th century, natural diets appealed to different groups of idiosyncratic reasons. The pacifist Marcus Schwantje founded a society for animal protection. Its journal arguing for vegetarianism as part of an ethics of compassion. Germany's natural food subculture included a number of Jews, possibly because a meatless meal rendered the food taboos inconspicuous. At around the same time, the racial nationalist Karl Weinländer worried that the massive war between Germans and Mongols would take place, in which the Mongols would win because of their vegetarian diet. I'm assuming by Mongols he means like the Turks, because I don't
think he means Mongols as in like the specific Mongolian nationality.
Oh no, definitely not, because
he means it. Yeah, I think he means it the same way that like when we say barbarian, we are talking about,
okay.
It's just like a general insult.
Nazis seized the back to nature ideas popularized by the life reform movement in the 19th and early 20th centuries and shaped them to their own ideological ends. A popular story holds that Hitler was a vegetarian. In fact, he did occasionally eat meat, but also embraced a broader natural diet to improve his energy and fitness. Many of us continue to associate environmentalism, organic agriculture, and vegetarianism with left-wing progressives, but right-wing nationalists now find them ripe for the picking. Agriculture puns in these articles are always just top-notch.
Yeah, they love them.
Nazi propagandists held up the natural diet as being proper to modern hard-working people. As culinary historian Volker Bach explains, this was partly achieved by educating housewives on the best ways to feed the body of the nation, an almost mythical organic whole. Cookbooks, household management guides, and organized home economics training taught women to feed their families in a way that would ensure Germany's food liberty. They were encouraged to use locally grown products, raw if possible, and to reduce consumption of meat, fat, and eggs. The idea of eating naturally has deep roots in German history, but there has never been an immutable connection between any given diet and identity or political position. After World War II, scientists have been active in the Third Reich, and the Third Reich rebranded themselves. Sorry? After World War II, scientists who have been active in the Third Reich rebranded themselves. Some worked to develop organic farming in West Germany, others promoted reform diets in East Germany. Politics of choice continue to change today. Many of us continue to associate environmentalism, organic agriculture, and vegetarianism with left-wing progressives, but right-wing nationalists now find them ripe for the picking.
Yeah, I agree. This article, I think, is it does a lot to illuminate that sort of tendency that we've been discussing, where as organic farming and organic, like natural, healthy lifestyles have become more popular, then they're more appealing to the right to sort of co-opt. We didn't get to read about the actual Nazi vegetarian butcher.
Not a word.
That's fascinating.
Yep. Maybe that's the update from from April 19. Maybe they've just closed down, hopefully. Wait a second, I'm just going to Google Metzgerei.
Yeah.
Oh no, they're still on. Well, they still have a website.
Yeah.
And they open up at 12 today.
Oh, nice. You should go in. I'm joking.
Oh, and on the 23rd of November, they've got their anniversary of 2 years of butchery.
Yeah, quote unquote. I love that.
Oh, and they got a prize in 2017. They got a Founders Prize 2017.
Yeah, interesting.
What the?
This is all in German, so I have no idea what's going on the screen, but it is.
Sorry, I'm just. Is that just a stand-in picture? Because wait a second. I'm just going to look for news. Because it's just a bunch of branding prizes and startup prizes that they got, but nothing ever says. Like here, they got a prize for an environmentally friendly gastro concept.
Sure. But nothing there.
No, nothing
actually says.
No.
Is it good?
Oh no! It also doesn't say anything about their politics. There's no
of course not. Except for the one article that we already read. Nope.
Maybe they're just a stand-in picture for because they're not in the article.
It does seem a little bit unethical to write an article about, eco-fascism, and then the picture that you use to describe eco-fascism are some people who aren't eco-fascists.
Yeah,
but
so
at the same time, I feel like they wouldn't post that picture if they didn't have. There's no way, right?
Or did they get sold to somebody and because there's literally nothing. This is so strange.
Oh, in German. Translate, yes, please. Pure vegetable, always fresh. Organic ingredients. Teamwork.
Oh, of course he watched Earthlings.
this is now I feel bad. I want to
Yeah.
be able to tell people, like, are these Nazis? And now I'm looking at their Instagram. Their Instagram is a bunch of people, bunch of fake meat products. Who's this? Workshop.
Huh.
So I'm going to do something risky. I'm going to share my camera.
Oh.
So, do you recognize any of this political imagery? Climate strike. Is this a lefty climate strike?
I think it's just the Entrepreneurs for Future. Yeah, I think it's just the Fridays for Future stuff.
Oh. Trying to find some indication of something.
Yeah.
That was the most political thing I saw on their feed. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm perfectly fine just calling them Nazis and that being it.
Sure.
But
I'm just
I would like to see some sort of an indication.
And also for like Politico to put their picture on this article. Like I saw the picture and assumed they were the Nazis that they were talking about.
Yeah.
So hopefully someone's gonna do. Wait a second.
They are, right? Yeah. These are the Nazis that the article's talking about.
Yeah. Maybe they got sold to somebody who's not a Nazi. Like that's the only like. I don't. I don't know. But I guess this is the point of the Nazis doing the plant-based thing the way that they do it, is specifically so that we can't tell. Yeah.
When we're a Nazi and when we're not looking at a Nazi. I think regardless, though, like the point remains that when you're getting into environmental living and clean and healthier living, it's about the principles behind why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Because sustainability for sustainability's sake isn't really a thing. If there's usually another motive behind it. And in this case, or in a lot of cases, when you're hearing about purity and preventing invasive species and protecting the land, it's very possible for these things to mean more than one thing.
Yeah.
In the case of the eco-fascists, eating pure, that generally means eating food that's produced by white people as opposed to Hispanic people. And protecting the land means protecting the land from immigrants. And invasive species are, an analogy for immigrants.
Yeah.
Just pretty dangerous rhetoric in general.
Absolutely.
What do you think about the point that a vegetarian diet
Hmm.
requires less land than a meat-based diet? Is that strictly speaking accurate?
I do believe so because you like for a meat-based diet, you also need the land to like grow the food for the cattle. So I believe you have to, if the numbers I remember are
Sure.
correct, you need like 9 kilograms of grain to produce 1 kilogram of meat. So you like not only have the land to like grow the
Yeah.
feed and keep the cattle and feed the animal. So yeah, like yeah, it makes sense. And also other like people who work on first of all raising the feed and then raising the cattle and like all the like everything they produce and I guess it makes sense.
I don't. It. The thing is,
Mhm.
there is a fact of nutrient density in food.
Mhm.
Um, and meat is just like scientifically, it's a
Yeah.
very nutrient dense food.
Mhm.
So to grow the amount of protein that you get from a kilogram of meat, I
Oh.
think requires much more than 9 kilograms of plant matter,
Mhm.
right? Because if you think about, you know, uh, peas, right? Like if you were to get sugar snap peas,
Mhm.
um, to get to get a meal out of peas, you need like an entire plant,
Yeah.
right? Like if you were going to eat only peas for dinner, think about growing that many peas in your garden.
Oh God. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it would take so much, right? So, and there are more dense foods, right? So like beans are very nutritious, but if you've ever grown beans, like to get a full
Uh huh.
pot full of beans
Yeah.
and make like a chili would take like 6 months and so much space in your garden to replace, like 1/8 of one cow worth of meat. So like I agree. Yeah, it probably
Mhm.
takes 9 times as much mass going into the
Yeah.
cattle
Uh huh.
to produce the meat on the back end. But like I'm pretty sure if we were to just eat that grain directly, we would have to eat 9 kilograms
Mhm.
worth of like, because also cattle are eating the whole straw, right? So they eat the grain and they eat the stalk,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
And humans
actually.
have to
Mhm.
process, right?
I just looked up
Hmm.
the amount of chicken has 27 gram of protein per 100 gram, and lentils have 9 gram of protein per 100 gram. So you'd need exactly
Three
three
times, yeah,
times as much. Yeah.
3 times the volume.
Hmm.
And so if you scale that up, like
Yeah.
if a chicken is one day worth
Hmm.
of protein, not one serving of chicken, but
Yeah.
like the actual bird,
Hmm.
if that's one day to produce that much lentil,
Hmm.
you're talk now we're starting to talk about like a quarter of an acre
Yeah.
of lentil.
Hmm.
Like it becomes a lot of food very quickly. So I don't know necessarily that like I mean the article says it, so
Yeah.
but that was an article being or an argument that was being presented. I
Hmm.
don't know if that's technically accurate.
Yeah.
Um, unless you eat an imbalanced vegetarian diet. A lot of people do that,
Hmm.
and it can be like sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like you're gonna die if you don't eat the perfect balance of the perfect version of protein.
Yeah.
Like it's something I struggle with digestively. I have
Hmm.
like some digestive issues.
Okay.
So like there are certain types of proteins that
Hmm.
my body doesn't break down very easily.
Hmm.
And those are the types of proteins that are protected well in plants.
Okay.
So if I were to eat a fully plant-based diet,
You'd be
I can do
struggling. Yeah.
yeah, I struggle.
Hmm.
Basically
Yeah.
is the end. Iron specifically is one of
Yeah.
the nutrients that like my body doesn't like the iron that you find in spinach.
Hmm.
I don't process very quickly
Yeah.
at all. So I end up iron deficient very
Hmm.
quickly.
I believe it's
Um,
overall a problem with iron, like because there's heme iron and like the
yes,
iron in blood and the iron in plants, and overall, like I believe protein in plants and iron in plants and all that stuff is a lot less. What's the word? Bioavailable. Like it's a
hmm
lot more difficult for the body to process it, anyways.
yeah, and a lot of people like that's one thing that I see a lot when I talk to vegans about
Mhm.
like diet specifically
Yeah.
is stop sharing. Yeah, a lot of vegans, they'll say to me like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, you could quite easily give up all meat, and you can replace all of that iron, all of that protein per volume." And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're right. Like I can produce that volume of protein,
Yeah.
but it won't be bioavailable for me
Mm-hmm.
specifically because I'm pretty sensitive to that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why I'm arguing against veganism right now, but like, yeah, it
No,
just
like I'm totally pro veganism, and I'm trying to cut back on animal products, so I'm totally for that. But also, like, to
Yeah.
sell it as an option for everyone is just not. It's just not correct, I think.
yeah.
And to make it sound like it's easy, it definitely isn't.
And the other aspect for veganism specifically, there
Mm-hmm.
are plant-based diets where like you can still eat like animal products,
Yeah.
as long as you're not like raising to slaughter animals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of those where you still eat like the eggs or you still drink the milk.
Yeah.
But you aren't necessarily like factory slaughtering cows
Mm-hmm.
by the hundred.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of those types of diets because then I can still get those types of,
Yeah.
bioavailable proteins
Mm-hmm.
and irons specifically. And animal fats, there are some oils and omega-3 acids in animal fats that are much easier to digest
Mm-hmm.
than trying to get the same thing out of plants.
Yeah. And B12, which I think is
B12.
not at all available from plants.
Yeah, but B12 is so easily supplemented in your diet now. Like you can get B12 at any grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was saying is, I think there is an argument for, especially in a lot of like the global South or in a lot of marginalized communities,
Mm-hmm.
like goat milk is a staple in so many parts of the world that are less developed or less able to produce. Like almond milk, yeah, it's great in theory, but that's not available in some places. Like, imagine going to sub-Saharan Africa and telling everyone, like, why aren't you drinking soy milk? Like,
yep, good luck with that.
Yeah. So I get frustrated with a lot of the vegan arguments.
Yeah.
I think it also plays into this sort of discussion we have about the far right, because I've noticed a lot that more and more the far right is picking up veganism.
Yeah.
And especially on YouTube, more and more vegan content is sort of driven by these far right or fascist elements.
Yeah.
And I think there is an aspect of minority countries or these less developed nations, less industrial developed nations. They're equally advanced in other ways.
Oh yeah.
But these nations don't eat vegan. This is a way that we can be superior. Similar to the way, I don't know if the same thing happened in Germany, but in America there was this huge trend of far right or like fascist, white supremacists specifically, drinking milk, specifically because Americans have a tendency for lactose intolerance.
And the whole raw milk thing that they were so obsessed with for a while.
Yeah, it was literally just because statistically it's slightly more likely that African Americans are lactose
intolerant. That's what that was about. I thought it was just because it's white.
Yeah, and that intolerance doesn't come from necessarily like a genetic predisposition either. It's like these are just different elements of your like youth diet. So African American families in their socioeconomic position are more likely to be raising their kids on like baby formula, like powdered milk formula, and the white elements in the upper middle class or the middle class were using milk or breastfeeding much more often. A lot of it has to do with how much maternity leave mothers would take to breastfeed specifically, and stay-at-home mothers and all these things. They're more common in more affluent areas and more affluent demographics. And so you aren't raised from birth drinking raw milk. So then as an adult, your body doesn't process raw milk. it's not a genetic argument, but they like to present it as a genetic argument. It's actually a counterpoint to their argument. It's like if it weren't for, the socioeconomic inequality, then we would both be drinking raw milk right now. And similarly, I think if it weren't for socioeconomic inequality, then veganism would be a much more palatable suggestion for the rest of. Veganism is one where I get frustrated with it specifically because it has such a strong moral, foundation.
Yeah.
Like the argument is so hard to refute. Like we're literally raising hundreds of thousands of animals specifically to murder them in a way that's terrible for the environment for nothing other than personal consumption. However, the way it's produced, the way it's presented in a lot of liberal America, liberal veganism sucks.
Oh God, yeah.
Because it's presented as no one in the world should ever touch an animal for any reason. And it's like, listen, animal husbandry is thousands of years old for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's because it is this immediately bioavailable source of key nutrients for people who are not necessarily able to grow all of those nutrients in other ways.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that people in the hills of Arizona are just as able to grow a sustainable vegan farm as they are, able to raise a herd of goats. Because goats will survive in the barren wasteland.
Yeah.
Way better than lettuce.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with liberal veganism, I have a YouTube channel where I upload recipes. Some of them are vegan, and the amount of comments I get on those videos, I use just white flour and sugar and just normal sugar because I want to keep it, affordable. And the amount of people who comment oh, have you considered, I don't know, desiccated dates and this weird coconut thing, and no, I haven't.
No, I haven't.
Nope.
Have you considered putting agave nectar in your tea? Well, agave nectar is 3 times the price of honey, guys. No, I haven't. Sorry, I have a budget here.
Yeah.
Yeah, agave nectar is one of the good ones though, because it is the cool thing about it is that it's way sweeter than honey, but it is so unavailable.
And it's terrible for the environment.
And it's terrible for the environment. Yeah. Factory plant farming is not better than factory animal farming.
No.
I mean, ethically, sure, you can make the argument ethically that you aren't murdering the cows.
Yeah.
Okay. But you are murdering the humans that have to pick the plants.
Also, especially with agave nectar, you're literally killing fruit bats that are being displaced for the farms, and same with palm oil. They're displacing orangutans whose populations have gone down. So you're killing animals.
Yeah. There is no ethical consumption.
No. Oh, I don't know how I got that. Oh yeah, you were saying on Twitter about the avocado agriculture and how the cartels are involved in that.
Oh yeah.
And then I don't know what made me think of that. I looked up Colombia cut flower industry and cartels. They're smuggling in cocaine in Mother's Day roses. Yep. So yes, the cartels are in the cut flower industry. Lovely.
Avocado from me. Yeah, I found the article. Lovely. Let me send it to you on Skype.
Thank you. No.
Okay. This is something that I actually wanted to bring up on the show because we talked about cut flowers a little while ago.
Yeah.
And this is just another great tie-in to that.
Want to go through it real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Right. This is in Mexico. Green gold brings both riches and violence. San Juan Parangaricutrio.
Don't even try.
Okay. Parangaricutrio. No, good enough. Small-scale avocado growers armed with AR-15 rifles take turns manning the vigilante checkpoints to guard against thieves and drug cartel extortionists in the town Michoacan. In this town, Michoacan State, the heartland of world production of fruit locals call green gold. The region's avocado boom, fueled by soaring U.S. consumption, has raised parts of western Mexico out of poverty in just 10 years. But the scent of money has drawn gangs and hyper-violent cartels that have hung bodies from bridges and cowed police forces. The rising violence is threatening the newfound prosperity. Recent U.S. warning that it could withdraw orchard inspectors sent shivers through $2.4 billion a year export industry. Some growers are taking up arms. At the checkpoint in San Juan, the vigilantes are calm but attentive. They say their crop is worth fighting for. If it wasn't for avocados, I would have to leave to find work. Maybe go to the United States or somewhere else, says one of the guards, Pedro de la Guante, whose small avocado orchard earns him far more than what he would get from any other legal or illegal crop. Luis, another guard who asked that his last name not be used out of fear of reprisals, lists the problems that come to the town with the avocado boom: extortion, kidnappings, cartels, and avocado theft. This is why we are here. We don't want any of that. While Mexican avocado growers have lived for years in fear of assaults and shakedowns, the situation went international in mid-August, when a U.S. Department of Agriculture team of inspectors was directly threatened by Sierra Cuartero, in Sierra Cuartero, a town just west of Uruapan in Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm feeling personally attacked. Sorry.
The town and the place.
Yes. While the agency didn't specify what happened, local authorities say a gang robbed the truck the inspectors were traveling in at gunpoint. For future situations that result in security breach or demonstrate an imminent physical threat to the well-being of APHIS personnel, we will immediately suspend program activities, the USDA wrote in a letter referring to the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Such a move could block shipments and devastate the industry that supplies U.S. consumers hungry for guacamole and avocado toast. It was only in 1997 that the U.S. lifted a ban on Mexican avocados that had been in place since 1914 to prevent a range of weevils, scabs, and pests from entering U.S. orchards. The place-based Avocado Growers and Packers Association published a warning letter from the USDA, an unusual move that some in Uruapan interpreted as a gesture aimed at making criminals aware they risk killing off the state's biggest money-making industry if U.S. inspectors stop approving exports. Neither the Avocado Association nor the USDA responded to requests for comment. The police chief in a town in western Mexico's avocado belt described what life is like with the Viagras cartel. The chief asked that his name not be used. The Viagras are so thoroughly present that he doesn't venture into nearby Uruapan without a phalanx of armed bodyguards. The Michoacan-based cartel derives its unusual name from their founder's habits of combing so much gel into his hair that it stands up on end. Oh, okay. They've done everything. Extortions, protection payments. They've flown drones over us, says the chief. They come in and want to set up drug laboratories in the orchards. But the Viagras are now also the hunted. The vicious Jalisco New Generation cartel is trying to move into Michoacan on several fronts. In August, the cartel hung 9 bodies from the overpass in Uruapan and left 10 more corpses hacked up or dumped by the road. Jesus Christ. But on the overpass, they hang a banner saying, "Be a patriot, kill a Viagra."
Mm-hmm.
Fucking hell. Further south, in the hostile lime-growing region of Michoacan, Jalisco cartel gunmen ambushed and killed 13 state police officers in mid-October. The attack so terrified police that when they went to collect the dead officers' burned vehicles, they worked so hastily they left behind a crushed, charred, bullet-perforated skull. Cartels, police, and vigilantes alike are spooked by the Jalisco cartel's onslaught. And the cattle-ranching town of Tepalcatepec, which lies on the border of Jalisco State, heavily armed vigilantes, apparently in the employ of a local gang, mounted 24-hour guard in a sniper post atop a hill guarding against incursions by the Jalisco cartel. One vigilante with an assault rifle slung over his shoulder, who refused to give his name, came down from a hilltop to scare away a news photographer. "Clear out of her, don't you know you have a .50 caliber rifle aimed at your head."
Mm-hmm.
As a much of Michoacan, the violence that is largely hidden by a wave of apparent prosperity brought by fruit. Miles of chain-link fence enclose seemingly endless groves of avocado trees, with limbs hanging heavy with the harvest. New packing plants seemingly go up overnight. But Hipólito Mora, who founded the state's civilian armed self-defense movement in 2013, said appearances are deceptive. The new fruit packing plants that had already been robbed at gunpoint 3 times in 1 week by thieves who apparently knew exactly when they would have cash on hand to pay farmers. If the business owners were to close their plants, the region's economy would come crashing down, says Mora, who is also a lime grower. Mexico supplies about 43% of the world avocado exports, almost all from Michoacan. The USDA has a near-present delegation of inspectors posted in Mexico. A few weeks after the incident with the USDA inspectors, an avocado orchard manager and a worker were kidnapped at gunpoint, allegedly by municipal police. 7 officers are under investigation in the case, and the police department has essentially disbanded. Jesus.
Yeah.
Today, heavily armed state police patrol the place, and Mayor Jose Rodriguez Baca is worried. He has 7 town policemen in jail, illegal loggers felling pine trees in the township, and the potential economic crisis on his hands. This has everyone worried, says Rodriguez Baca of the U.S. Warning and Violence in the Town. If they close the doors on us in the United States, everything would come crashing down. His township shows the shortcomings of state and federal anti-crime strategies, in which police, the army, and National Guard often come into troubled towns, make a show of force for a few weeks, and then leave. State police have been assigned to patrol earlier this year before the U.S. inspectors were assaulted, but were withdrawn in July to attend another hotspot. Avocado growers are feeling scared, alone, and caught in the middle. Carlos Martinez is a third-generation avocado grower whose 2.5-hectare, 6-acre grove can produce more than 50 tons of avocados in a good year, worth about $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
It is a question of crime that affects us as third parties and our customers, Martinez said. We just wake up each morning hoping it doesn't happen to us. Martinez hasn't had any shipments of avocados stolen yet, a common complaint in Michoacan. But he said thieves often steal avocados from the orchards. He, like most growers, had to put up a chain-link fence and hire a guard. But it is the fear of kidnapping or the phone call demanding protection payments that worry him the most. I don't answer phone calls from numbers I don't know, Martinez said. In San Juan de la Guante is an example of how avocados have lifted many in Michoacan out of poverty. He is an itinerant farm worker before he planted avocados on a hectare, 2.4 acres, of sandy land 11 years ago. That relatively small plot now yields as much as 10 tons of avocados. This year he was lucky to sell in August when prices were high, at 40 pesos a kilogram. This means De La Guante has earned at least 15,000 this year. Adriana Villacana, a professor at Univa Catholic University in Uruapan, said the avocado boom has lifted thousands out of poverty. There are a lot of women working at packing plants, and a majority of them describe themselves as single mothers or single. However, a rising tide hasn't lifted all boats. The region's 15,000 or so avocado pickers earn an attractive wage for the region, but the job is seasonal and the physical demands of climbing trees with long poles to get the avocados mean few can work beyond age 45. Willy Kanya, who also sits on the Uruapan Citizen Safety Advisory Board, says the region's crime problem will be worse if the avocado industry collapses. If there were no avocados, where are they going to work? Villacana asked. The most likely thing is that they would hire themselves out to work for the criminals.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Yeah, so first of all, I don't want this to come off like... I feel so bad because we have this growing a left like brand, and we're trying to talk about agriculture from a leftist perspective as opposed to like the crypto fascist or neo-Nazi perspective. And it always seems like we get on here and we say like, oh, all these Nazis are organic farming and plant-based diets are causing so much crime and they're terrible for the environment. And it's like, that's not actually the argument that I want to make. It's more that there is an argument for growing locally and eating plant-based diets that aren't the same arguments that fascists use.
Yeah.
So rather than us talking about protecting our land from foreign invaders and eating pure vegetables to protect the Aryan race, no, it's more that the international agriculture trade and the reliance on the global south to produce these foods that we are starting to eat more and more of is having distinct negative impacts on those communities. And we can alleviate that pressure to some extent by gardening ourselves and relying more on the produce that we create ourselves.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously, in doing so, we will naturally cut back on the amount of meats that we consume, which is already an unethical industry.
Yeah.
So I think, we can't reasonably expect people to eat avocado like persistently, even though it's one of like the core sources of like fats in a vegan diet. I think we need to accept that those fats are going to have to come from somewhere else. Nut oils are a good example. I think, we need to have a discussion about whether or not we can get more like nut production. For example, in Michigan where I live, we grow walnuts on accident. We have like walnut trees all over the place, and like you step on like the freshly fallen walnut, it's covered by this whole crabapple style like fruit, and that is pretty much inedible. But after the winter, all of that fruit is decomposed and gone away, and you have the walnut left, and you can grind up those fresh, wet walnuts into like an oil, and you can use that walnut oil in a lot of the same ways you could use an avocado for its fatty oils. So I don't think that avocado is necessarily necessary for the vegan diet, even though it's become such a core of a vegan diet. And avocado importing has these very tangible negative impacts. I sort of reject anytime I read an article that's like, extolling the virtues of lifting people in developing nations out of poverty. I sort of reject those outright because I think there are other ways to go about improving the quality of life there that actually improve the quality of life and don't lead to people being like physically unable to work by age 45.
Or hanging off a bridge.
That's like pretty young to be out of the game. So I don't think that industry is like healthy even there. Even though that person made $15,000, I feel like that's actually not that much money. There is some, like, it's not quite the same because their cost of living is also much lower. And the exchange rate, $15,000 is like, oh God, what's it? 300,000 pesos, I want to say. I think that was the exchange rate the last time I checked. And and 300,000 pesos does actually still go a pretty good distance.
Yeah.
So it's not like clean. They're making what minimum wage workers in America make and living like minimum wage workers in America. That will be a comfortable living there, but that's not actually so much money that it's worth the risk and the harms of the industry.
Yeah.
And like I said, there are ways that land could be used that are more productive and healthier for that community. So I really don't feel bad about not importing the avocados that are getting them invaded by 3 different cartel groups. Like that's absurd to me. It's like a 5-part gang war: private security forces, police forces, and then these 3 cartels. It's like that's not acceptable. So these are the arguments that I use when I advocate for like gardening or growing local produce or buying local produce. And they stand in very stark contrast if we look at what the bio-Nazis use. It's not about America becoming agriculturally self-sufficient, or like it's not about, you know, an alternative to multicultural agriculture. It's not, you know, railing against barbarism or anything like that. It's these are genuine just practicalities.
Yeah.
It is just actually a good idea to grow organic food at home. Yeah, I think that's sort of what that article made me think about. It's like, you know, we spend all this time talking about like vegan lifestyles, and one of the costs that liberal vegans specifically ignore is the cost to the places where this produce is coming from.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, because we would consider all of the victims of these cartel violence in a liberal vegan program, these are like afterthoughts. These are externalities. These are just like system inefficiencies that they'll tolerate. I won't tolerate even these.
Yeah.
So for me, the only way forward really is that community-driven, like self-sufficient agriculture model.
Yeah. Also, the industry just is not defensible on the aspect of like, it makes money for people who don't have any, because like I think the article also said that like a lot of the employees are single mothers, so there has been like whatever like mechanism leads to the breakup of families, that's already happened. This is basically a plaster on a like deeper issue. You know, like, you know, you have to then choose like there has already damage being done to these people, and then they have to choose like, is it worth me getting some money and then having to deal with the cartels and being under, well, more or less like constant like danger of my life, which then you know, making some money really is not defensible as a, you know, you should be eating avocados to like support single mothers in Mexico. Makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And so like there are other huge symptoms of like a terrible environment that's been created through external pressures that aren't solved by the $2.4 billion agriculture of avocados in the region. Like not being able to sustain a police force against all of the corruption and organized crime of the cartels in the region. Like those cartels didn't arise for no reason. They arose because they're servicing black markets that develop in response to the inavailability of free trade in and out of the region, particularly trade that goes into Mexico, that sends funding into Mexico, that isn't at incredibly cut rates compared to what we would spend in America. Another example of that, larger external picture is we are starting to export a lot of manufacturing, like automotive manufacturing, to Mexico. And we're doing that because they can pay Mexican laborers way less than they can pay American laborers. So if we found a way as an international community to dictate that a Mexican laborer be paid as much as an American laborer, then the actual region of the world would have much more wealth coming into it. And this would disincentivize cartel activity by closing some of these black markets. But also it would provide a better basis of funding for the police forces that would otherwise respond to the cartel violence.
Yeah.
So it's a significant and widespread international issue that growing avocados is so dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's not solved by just eating some more avocados and hoping that industry pays for its own costs. That's just not how anything works.
Yeah.
And additionally, like I said, the cost of living there will be lower. One of those will be food costs. Living in agricultural regions, it's easier to go to a farmer's market, and get a basket of those avocados for $10, $20. But I don't. And it will be that way for tomatoes and onions and everything else that they eat.
Yeah.
But I think the way our market incentivizes the production of avocados is probably using up more of their agricultural land and making it harder for them to actually feed themselves. Similar to how we discussed the cut flower industry in Colombia.
Yeah.
They were using all of the land and water to produce these flowers on profit motive, and as a result, the people there are actually suffering. I see similar symptoms here.
And also a region that's so dependent on exactly one fruit. If there's a bad year, if there's some sort of natural catastrophe, that entire region is going to struggle for probably years.
Yeah, and I wonder, so the article says it follows the one farmer, Martinez, Carlos Martinez, the third generation avocado grower who had 6 acres. It said he was lucky to sell in August and make the $15,000. Well, what it doesn't say is the people who were unlucky and they had to harvest in December. They might have made half as much.
Yeah.
They might have had 5 tons and made $7,500. And so it while in some cases, but that's growing. You can't consistently grow the same vast quantities of a plant year after year after year. Sometimes things die. A week or two of growing time, that could be the difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this article really stood out to me. I guess it does root back to that Colombia article, where it's something that I keep seeing over and over now. Is the cost of factory farming for all of the things that we take for granted. Like the availability of avocado at the grocery store for $1 is very convenient to the liberal vegan who lives in Portland and is suggesting everybody eat avocados as their main breakfast thing. And it's well, okay, but the people who grow those avocados, they still live in capitalism.
Yeah.
It's not, the fight's not over yet because you found a food that replaces an animal product. Yeah. Yeah, it was a very interesting article. Thanks for reminding me to look that up.
With all these industries, it's just so, you think you're doing something good and you're not, and it's kind of on the surface, it would be so nice if the liberal, just go vegan and everything will be fine. It would be true because, that's something most people or some people can do.
Yeah.
But there's just no escaping capitalism. It doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Until you address the capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think the way we address capitalism is by finding the small, not escapes from capitalism, but the small sanctuaries within capitalism.
Yeah.
And I think the garden is a really good place to do that because right now, if you go to the store and you get, some romaine lettuce to make a salad for the
Mm-hmm.
evening, I'm fairly confident that there's a similar story behind that lettuce as behind these avocados.
Yeah.
And if you can go to the garden and grab that instead,
Uh-huh.
it's just that one more defiant act
Yeah.
against, capitalist production.
Mm. I read an article years ago about salad farms in Germany employing especially Polish women because they're smaller than Polish men. So there's like a lot of families in Poland being split up. Like the mother goes to like work in agriculture in Germany and doesn't see her child for like half a year. Just because,
There was, and this is, you know, another shade darker of a turn.
Mm.
During American slavery, there's like this conception that everybody has, which is that like all of the women were the house slaves and all of the men worked in fields,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually not true.
Mm-hmm.
For picking any sort of plant,
Yeah.
usually women were used to do the picking part,
Mm-hmm.
and then male slaves were used to like actually transport
Okay.
the bulk product, like the baskets would
Mm-hmm.
get dumped into carts, and those carts would be pulled by like men.
Okay.
Yeah, so the women were actually in the field,
Mm-hmm.
and they would do the parts that would like get your hand cut up
Mm-hmm.
from picking cotton.
Oh my God.
Cotton bushes are incredibly thorny.
Oh, okay. I had no idea. I
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
just know like
You
cotton
ever seen?
as a sort of like in
Yeah, the fluff.
yeah, the
Yeah,
fluff.
you get the fluff. You get the fluff
I've
out
never
of
actually
a
seen
pod.
the entire plant.
Yeah, I'll pull up a picture. Cotton plant. Images. Let's try and find one that's where you can see sort of the plant structure, the bud structure, the flower structure. Here's a good picture. And so that is like cotton that's ready for picking. I put it in Skype.
Okay.
And then the second picture that I posted is cotton that's still ripening. So it grows in these little buds.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the bud matures and ripens, they split open and the fluff is revealed.
Uh-huh.
And so, especially during the time of slavery, like there are more advanced methods now.
Yeah.
But at the time of slavery, you would have mostly women crawl within these bushes. They grow to be about 4 or 5 feet high, and pluck out that fluff with their hands.
Wow.
Yeah, and so not only are there thorns on
Mm-hmm.
the stem, on the branches of the bush, usually at the junction points,
Yeah.
you get like a little protrusion. But the pods themselves, those are like dried, rigid, hard, like shells almost.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, they cut your fingers open, and they're terrible to work around.
Oh my God.
And that's done mostly by women. And then the actual fluff is dumped into baskets and carts and like wheelbarrows that then the male slaves are lugging around.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't want, almost in any picking industry, you don't want like a 6'2", 200-pound dude doing your picking. It's just not efficient.
Yeah.
Here is a row of cotton. Hopefully you can get sort of a grasp for the size of the plant from that. Oh, it's not a great picture. It looked really good in the thumbnail. Here's a good one.
Oh.
Because it's got the guy's hand in it. So you can see sort of the size of the plant a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just all of the picking for that type of thing would be done by people who are smaller and more quote unquote nimble.
Yeah.
And yeah, the slaves were selected for that. So that's why you would get the slave auctions where it would be the smallest of the women and the largest of the men.
Yeah.
Because it's what's most efficient for working in this environment. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
So I imagine in most agriculture now,
Mm-hmm.
you get similar motivations.
Yeah.
Though probably not in as grotesque a fashion
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
like actual slave trade.
Good God, yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. Interesting the turns we take on this podcast.
Yeah. Interesting and thoroughly depressing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I said it was a little bit darker of a turn.
Yeah.
But, you know. Yeah. Avocados.
Yep.
You know, like, yeah, they're great for you.
They're
you know, they're
lovely.
They're a staple in a vegan diet.
Mm.
And they are causing extreme cartel violence.
Yep.
In the south of Mexico. So, you know, pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I just remember the sponsored content on that vegan butcher thing.
Sure.
Is it's an article called "Preparing the Ground for Tomorrow," and it's
okay.
An article, sponsored content from the ECPA, the picture from the ECPA, and the article is written by Geraldine Caucus, General Director, European Crop Protection Association, ECPA. And I had no idea who they are. ECPA. ECPA represents the crop protection industry of Europe and promotes a safe and sustainable use of pesticides to bring benefits to you, the farmer, and the environment. We are working to open up conversation about food production in Europe with the hashtag With or Without campaign. Join us as we address questions and concerns. And it's just people who want to like throw pesticides on everything. And they have a little cooking show, and it's amazing.
Yeah, great, cool. This article about organic, clean, vegan farming is sponsored by pesticides. I love that.
And it's like this ECPA website. It's so slick because it so looks like, you know, any like the European like EU websites that they have for all their campaigns. So like it actually took me a minute to realize, no, these are just lobbyists.
Yeah, these are just lobbyists.
Just you know.
You know, just lobbying for pesticides. No big deal. Great. Oh, was there anything else that was on the docket for today's show?
I don't believe so.
Well, it's been lovely.
I'll
let you actually close the stream this time before I
okay.
make the call, so my information doesn't keep getting leaked.
All right. So, thank you for streaming with me, and I'm going to
do it again Sunday, right?
Yes. Well, Monday for me. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Speak to you then.
Yeah, I'll see you then.
And the stream has been stopped.
Awesome. See? Yeah, better. We're getting better.
Exactly. It's a process.